It's been a struggle-filled rookie campaign for Blackhawks defenseman Kevin Korchinski in his own zone, but on today's episode, I'll talk about why I'm not too concerned with his struggles and why I think it's still far too early to put him in a conversation with Adam Boqvist or Ian Mitchell. All that and plenty more right here on Locked On Blackhawks.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome on into another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can go and give me a follow on X at Jack Bushman2, and make sure to also go and follow my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. And just a quick reminder, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff really does help me out in growing the show. If you're tuning into the audio version of today's episode, make sure that you're downloading all of those latest shows, or even if you're someone who just regularly watches on YouTube, even if you don't tune into the podcast version, it would really help me out if you could be downloading all of those latest episodes. Rate and review if you like what you're hearing or watching on a daily basis as well. And I also got to let you know today's episode is brought to you by the Sleeper app, the go-to platform for daily fantasy sports. And right now, if you go and use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps, then you'll get up to an $100 match on your first deposit with Sleeper. All right, good morning, everyone. Again, thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. Blackhawks in their last outing, I do apologize for getting this out. I didn't have a show come out on Wednesday. I've been a little bit under the weather still, battling through it. Didn't have much of a voice either, so was just trying to rest up and make sure that I'll be healthy enough to get an episode out over the weekend so I can at least get you 4 shows this week, maybe even 5 on Sunday, depending on my schedule. But in the last outing for the Blackhawks on Tuesday night to kick off their 3-game West Coast road trip, it was their second match. Excuse me. Like I said, still a little bit shoddy. For the second time in 5 days, though, the Blackhawks took on the Los Angeles Kings. And for the second time in 5 days, the Blackhawks lost a ugly, lopsided affair to the Los Angeles Kings. Friday night, though, was an absolute disaster. The Blackhawks fell behind 3-0 in the blink of an eye en route to their 5-0 defeat, their 10th shutout of the season. And while the final score may look like it was another landslide in favor of the Kings, it wasn't close at the end, sure, but the Blackhawks actually kept this one competitive until things kind of got spaced out there in the middle frame. The opening 20 minutes, though, from the Blackhawks was really good, and if you've been tuning into the shows consistently or watching the Blackhawks consistently over the last couple of months and really all season long, the first period has just given them so many issues. Even in their wins that they've been having here in the month of March, they had won 4 of their last 6 games prior to this game on Tuesday night against Los Angeles. Even in those wins, though, basically all of them, the Blackhawks had to come back in those games and didn't really get off to the best start. But in this game out west in LA, they got off to a really solid start, I thought, especially on the defensive side of things. It was another struggle for them to create offensively. This Kings defense is just really solid, one of the best in the entire NHL. But the Blackhawks did their part in the first period defensively as well. It took the Kings nearly 11 minutes to register their first shot on goal, and they also only wound up tallying 6 total in that first period. And the Blackhawks came out with an even score, which is a win in the first period on the road against a team of the caliber of the Los Angeles Kings. They fell behind 1-0 despite holding the Kings without a shot on goal for so long, but they did respond back nicely with a 5-on-3 power play goal. Philipp Kurashev's centering pass deflected in off of Nick Foligno, his 8th power play goal of the season, by the way, ties Tyler Johnson for the team lead. But like I said, the second period was really where things started to go a little bit poorly for the Blackhawks as the Kings found some momentum. Gavrikov with a Heck of a wrist shot from the point, put them ahead 2-0. Kevin Korchinski then with a bad turnover. I'll talk more about him and his struggles coming up in segment 2. Make sure to stay tuned until that point. Bad giveaway by Korchinski off of a feed from behind the net coming from Mrazek. Wasn't able to handle it properly, turns it over, and then ends up in the back of his net just a couple of seconds later. The real backbreaker for the Blackhawks, though, came on Kopitar's second tally of the period with just 51.8 seconds left. Wyatt Kaiser in his return to the NHL, the first game he had played since December 19th. I thought he was okay, but he got boxed out here by a couple of Kings in front. Kopitar gets to the rebound, giving them a 3-goal advantage going into the third period. That was basically the nail in the coffin for the Blackhawks. They ended up giving up 2 more in the third. Kevin Korchinski winds up with a tally of his own, but the damage had already been done, and the Blackhawks unfortunately get beat handedly by the Los Angeles Kings for the second time in 5 days, kicking off their 3-game West Coast road trip with a loss and unable to win back-to-back games for the second time here in the month of March. My key takeaways from this one, as I've mentioned on the show recently, what I'm really looking for in these final 20 games from the Blackhawks basically is what the meaningful players are doing, what the kids are doing, the potential pieces of the puzzle, or at this point, what we've learned, guys who are very likely to be pieces of the puzzle. Connor Bedard, he actually only finished with 1 shot on goal in this game, did pick up a secondary assist on Nick Foligno's tally that now gives him 54 points in 55 games this season, still stepping on the heels of that point per game margin. Only 1 shot on goal for Bedard, but I thought it was, what game was it? The Blackhawks, might have been, I think it was against the Avalanche when the Blackhawks lost 5-0 a couple of weeks ago, where the offense just really couldn't get anything going. Connor Bedard kind of had to go and do it himself. The Kings were deflecting a lot of shots, blocking a lot of his shots, but you could tell he was just trying to fire it on net at will because he knew not a lot of other options were working for the Blackhawks offense. So I like to see Connor Bedard at that young age not have any hesitation in shooting the puck, being aggressive, continuing on with that mindset, and not being afraid to recognize what's going on around him. And that's what I've loved about Connor Bedard during his rookie year. His hockey IQ is just so high because he's been, playing the game night in and night out since he was a young lad and eats, breathes, and sleeps hockey. And he just sees the game so well and recognizes everything in front of him and recognizes when, hey, maybe I got to step it up a little bit personally here to give my team an opportunity to come back. And I'm sure frustration probably played a part in it, right? Things weren't going well for the Blackhawks offensively at even strength all night long. So I'm sure Bedard was frustrated with that and trying to force the puck on net a little bit. But hey, he's the best offensive player on this team, so I have no problems with it. The underlying numbers were really strong for Connor Bedard as well. He had 20 minutes and 34 seconds of time on ice, I wanted to point out, because he's been well over 20 minutes a game basically since he returned from the jaw injury, and I don't expect that to slow down anytime soon with 13 games left in the season. But like I said, good underlying numbers. Was on the ice for 22 shot attempts for to 10 against at even strength, and also had an 11-4 scoring chances for ratio at 5-on-5. So even though the Blackhawks offense was kind of stymied again by the Kings, Connor Bedard did his best, and it wasn't due to a lack of effort that he didn't have a bigger night. Philipp Kurashev, though, continues to be a talking point here on the show. I know I probably am starting to sound like a broken record because I just keep saying how impressed I've been with his development this season, but he keeps taking it up a notch. And after having 2 points in this game against Los Angeles, had primary assists. Had primary assists on both of the goals. Did he have a secondary on the other one? No, we had a primary on both of them. Sorry about that. 2 primary assists in this game. That now gives him 9 points over his last 5 contests and 44 points in 62 games total on the season. And I mentioned like a week ago, it's going to be fun to watch Kurashev race for 50 points. I know it's unlikely, but could he be getting 60 points this year if the Blackhawks offense goes well down the stretch of the season here? He needs 16 points over his next 13 games. Like I said, I don't expect it to happen, but boy, what a story that would be, especially when Kurashev missed time at the beginning of the season. And even if he plays in all the games for the Hawks down the rest of the way, he's only going to play in 75 total. So man, if he could push 60 points in nearly 75 games after his previous career high was 25 the year prior, I mean, it has just been bananas. But the speed, the transition ability, the chemistry with Connor Bedard, it's all been spectacular this year out of Philipp Kurashev. Really excited to see what he has in store for us in these final 13 games. Lukas Reichel also, of course, played in his second consecutive game up in the NHL after being recalled from Rockford following a short stint down there. Kind of quiet game for Reichel, 1 shot on goal in 14 minutes of ice time, but I did think he had a noticeable step, and there is a difference when you watch him. He has that gallop ability in the neutral zone and on the forecheck to make plays happen and to win foot races to loose pucks. We saw it in his first game back against the San Jose Sharks on Sunday a couple of different times. One of them leading to a primary assist on a goal from Kevin Korchinski. And those are the efforts we need to see from Lukas Reichel. Yeah, we want to see him racking up points on a consistent basis here to finish off the season, but it's also about the night in and night out effort. That really became a problem for him when he was going through those struggles, and I hope he just has a better focus on a consistent basis here in these final 13 games to leave a lasting impression on this Blackhawks coaching staff and the Blackhawks front office. And then the last thing I have from this game, Colin Blackwell, unfortunately, suffered an injury, and it honestly didn't look all that good, Blackhawks fans. Got checked into the boards awkwardly with like his left arm pinned alongside him. And as someone who's separated their shoulder and also had a collarbone injury, the way that he was kind of walking off the ice made me concerned that that could be the case. We don't have any official word on Blackwell, but he didn't practice yesterday with the Blackhawks out in California, and he's not expected to play tonight. Not expected. He won't play tonight against the Anaheim Ducks. It's all the updates we have on Colin Blackwell, but hopefully that injury isn't as serious as it kind of looked to me, and that he'll be able to return to the lineup before the end of the year, because he's been such an integral energy guy on that second line for the Blackhawks. Obviously dealt with injuries already throughout the end of last year and through a majority of the first half of this year's regular season. And if it is a long-term injury, you also got to wonder how that's going to affect what the Blackhawks are going to do with Colin Blackwell this offseason, as he's slated to become an unrestricted free agent. If he gets injured, I do worry that those injury-plagued concerns are going to lead to the Blackhawks not bringing him back, kind of like a Tyler Johnson vibe. They're effective players when healthy, but just haven't been all that healthy. So knock on wood, hopefully it's nothing too serious for Colin Blackwell, but I figure we'll probably have some updates on that in the next couple of days. And whenever we do, I'll make sure to get on it and let you all know what's going down with them right here on Locked On Blackhawks. All right, there are my thoughts on the Hawks' second defeat in 5 days to the Los Angeles Kings on Tuesday night. Coming up in just a moment here, I will get into my thoughts on Kevin Korchinski's struggles that have been very notable in the defensive zone. But first, I need to talk to you all about Sleeper, a new NHL season. It's coming to its close here. We only got 1 month to go in the regular season, but there's all sorts of possibilities and all sorts of races still going on down these final 13 games. Connor Bedard looks like he's on his way to winning the Calder Trophy for being named NHL Rookie of the Year. It's a race to see who's going to win the President's Trophy between the Vancouver Canucks, the Boston Bruins, and the Florida Panthers. I personally think the Boston Bruins are going to win that race, and Austin Matthews still on the push for 60, 65 goals. He's going to be winning the Rocket Richard Trophy this year regardless, and you could be winning alongside all of them by playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports, and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you have the chance to win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy contests. And it's so simple. All you have to do is select whether studs like Nathan McKinnon, Connor Bedard, Connor McDavid, or Austin Matthews are going to record more or less than their Sleeper projections for goals, assists, points, shots, saves, and more in any given game. And again, Sleeper offers you the chance to win 100 times your cash, so start paying attention, make the right picks, and you could be winning real big. And you can also go and use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps to get up to an $100 match on your first deposit with Sleeper. Who doesn't love free money? And even if you just want to go and throw in $25, $50. You don't have to throw in $100. Sleeper will match you up to $100 on your first deposit if you use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps. Again, use promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps to get up to an $100 match. And you can go and see Sleeper's terms of use right now for more details. Segment 2, what I wanted to get into next that was very noticeable in the game against the Kings and has been noticeable throughout stretches of the regular season. It's Kevin Korchinski's struggles in the defensive zone, and it was not a good night for the Kevin Korchinski-Jacob Megna pairing on Tuesday against the Los Angeles Kings. Even with both of them being on the ice for Korchinski's late goal in the third period, they still each finished at -4, and Kings really had their way whenever those two were on the ice. The Blackhawks didn't have a very good defensive performance when that pairing was on the ice. And Kevin Korchinski, those talks have been notable all throughout his rookie season for the most part. But personally, I'm not very surprised by that. And if you have been someone that's listened to the show all season long, I've talked about how those are going to be the biggest developmental hurdles that Kevin Korchinski is going to have to handle, trying to be a really solid everyday pro and a high-end first-round pick that the Blackhawks drafted at 7th overall. But it was always going to be a challenge for him this season. I really believe that. I expected it to be tough for him. He's the youngest defenseman in the entire NHL right now. He's still only 19 years old, a very young 19-year-old that's not going to be turning 20 until June later on this summer. And being, 6'1", yeah, he's got some good height. Still about 185, 190 pounds. And even when we see those post-game videos in the locker room, like when Korch got the chain the other day against the San Jose Sharks, like, he's skin and bone, man. That's a WHL type of body right there. That is not an NHL type of body. He's just going to have to get thicker, and he's going to have to get stronger. Those are the biggest parts of his game that he needs to work on. It's in the defensive zone, and I think the biggest thing that he really needs to focus on is those dirty areas. And Luke Richardson's mentioned it to the media a couple of times, but right out in front of the net, he just needs to get grindier, get scrappier, and not allow opposing forwards to just go park themselves right in front of, the Blackhawks goaltender and get inside position, get a piece of the puck, or take away the vision from the goaltender. And along the boards, right, there's just some tough sequences. Korchinski is getting bodied out of position. He's not able to win a lot of loose pucks in the Z zone. He's having to chase. There's a lot of rotation going on in the Blackhawks defensive coverage, with that being a result. But I kind of expected that to be the case. He was going to be a little bit of a fish out of water coming from the WHL up to the Blackhawks at such a young age. And also, he hasn't really been in the best situation, right? The Blackhawks defense has been banged up all season long. Connor Murphy, when's the last time Korchinski was able to play with a true, sturdy, veteran defenseman in Connor Murphy, right? He's been out for quite a while. And yeah, Jacob Megna got off to a good start to his Blackhawks tenure, but he's come back down to earth, and it hasn't been all that great for him over the last month or so. And that's where Korchinski has been in the lineup night in and night out. So it's not exactly like a sturdy, safe place for him to be developing and playing on one of the worst teams in the entire NHL. It was going to be hard on him. He was going to spend a lot of time in the defensive zone and not be able to flourish and, use the skills at the things he does well, like his transition offense. And man, his skating, I'll tell you what, that's still what I believe gives him such a high ceiling, and why I'm really not concerned, because we've seen the skating abilities, right? How mobile he is, how fast he can get up and down the ice. We haven't really seen it impact the transition offense for the Blackhawks, but he has shown an ability to dash through the neutral zone, to carry the puck into the offensive zone. And there have been a few passes this year that you just go, wow, that's a pass that shows why he was a top 10 pick in the NHL draft. Like, he's got great vision. He's got great playmaking abilities. I have personally been disappointed with how he's looked on the Blackhawks power play when given an opportunity. But quite honestly, until the last few weeks, the Blackhawks power play has been atrocious all season long. So it isn't exactly a position for Kevin Korchinski to thrive in right here, right now. And I think there also is this like unfair comparison to see what Connor Bedard is doing in his rookie year compared to what Kevin Korchinski is. And he's a year older, you know what I mean? But it's completely unfair. Connor Bedard is otherworldly. You can't be comparing other prospects to Connor Bedard. It's just not a fair game. And also, I've seen some people say they're worried about Kevin Korchinski falling into the same bucket as Adam Boqvist or as a Nicholas Beaudin, Ian Mitchell. I mean, we've seen it time and time again out of undersized defensemen at the NHL level for the Blackhawks, not being able to be good enough offensively to make themselves worth all the defensive struggles that they go through, right? That was kind of the case for Mitchell, Beaudin, Boqvist, all of them basically. I still think it's far too early to throw Kevin Korchinski in any sort of bust conversation, right? Number one, because of the skating. Like, I think he's a way better skater than all of those guys. And watching his play in Seattle before the Blackhawks drafted him and watching him at development camps these last couple of years, I feel like we haven't been able to fully see how great his skating abilities are at the NHL level. But he's got the tools and the fundamentals and the wheels, the acceleration to be a really dynamic skater in a couple of years' time. I'm not going to go and say he's going to be like a Cale Makar out there, but I really think the rover position that he could play, if you give him a good defensive defenseman alongside him, is going to do wonders for him. And that skating ability is undeniable. One of the best skaters I've ever personally seen in person. And I would say he has the higher offensive upside than all three of those guys that I just mentioned. We just haven't really been able to see it because the Blackhawks offense is terrible and there's not a whole lot of dangerous weapons on this team to help Kevin Korchinski show off those skills. Also, I know this doesn't suggest he has great size. He's actually one of the smaller defensemen in the Blackhawks pipeline right now at 6'1". But Mitchell, Boqvist, Beaudin, those all were smaller guys, and there's just more room for Kevin Korchinski to grow as a 6'1" defenseman. I know he's skinny, but if he does fill out a little bit more, he's just a bigger guy than all of them. And he's longer. He has better strides that helps in his skating ability as well. He's just so raw still at this point in time. I think it's unfair to heavily critique Kevin Korchinski for the struggles that he's gone through during his rookie season. And I think his development is going to be of the utmost importance to the Blackhawks organization moving forward. Did they get this one right? There's pros, there's cons. I still think I'd rather have him learning the hard way at a young age to instill in his brain like what it kind of tastes like and what it takes to have success in this league. You know, sometimes I really believe you got to lose to learn how to win. And I think Kevin Korchinski going through these tough sequences in his rookie year and the Blackhawks not winning a lot of games, I think that's going to toughen him up at a young age. So I think there's pros there, but there are pros to him going back to WHL, being the man. Yeah, maybe he doesn't develop as well there, but there is something to be said about just having that confidence and having that mojo that you're an absolute dog. So there's pros to either side. I could have lived with either of the decisions. I don't think it was a terrible one by the Blackhawks to bring him up to the NHL, though. But I do think they're going to be giving him a long look this offseason in terms of what is the next step, because he will be eligible to play in the AHL next season with the Rockford IceHogs. And I don't think it would be the worst thing ever for him to go down there. I feel like some Blackhawks fans, some viewers, some listeners out there maybe would freak out if they see, Korchinski, after spending all of his rookie year in the NHL, go down to Rockford for his sophomore campaign. But quite honestly, had he been eligible for Rockford this year, I think he would have played a couple of stretches of games down there because the defensive struggles have been noticeable. And putting him in Rockford, I think would be a good idea, just to kind of not force him into the highest level of high levels right away, when clearly he's been a little bit in over his head in those situations. So I don't think they want to be rushing him along. I think his development is going to be of the A1 importance this offseason. So yeah, that's why I wouldn't be surprised to see Kevin Korchinski in Rockford next year. Don't freak out if that does happen. And I'm not freaking out right now. I still have plenty of high hopes for Kevin Korchinski. His skating abilities, his offensive abilities, those are always going to be his bread and butter. It's all about how he develops in the defensive zone over these next couple of years and making sure he's sturdy enough to make sure his offensive abilities are worth it at the end of the day. Hopefully it's a stronger finish to the end of the season for Kevin Korchinski. He does have goals in back-to-back games. He is the leading defenseman goal scorer for the Blackhawks this season. There's something to be said about that as well. So even in the downs, there have been ups for Korchinski. Just how it goes when you're a rookie. There's peaks, there's valleys. It's all about the ride, staying focused, and I'm sure Kevin Korchinski is going to be just fine. No worries whatsoever, Blackhawks fans. All right, there are my thoughts on Kevin Korchinski's woes in the defensive zone throughout his rookie season. Coming up in just a moment here, I still have to get into a fun conversation on the NHL's proposed rule changes for next season. But first, I need to talk to you all about Robinhood. Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar that you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But now, get this. Through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar that you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. And there's no cap on that 3% match either. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. But this offer is only good through April 30th. So make sure to go and get started right now at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss, and limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. The 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of first 3% match and must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. And Robinhood IRA is available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC is a registered broker-dealer. Back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Again, if you're watching on YouTube right now, hit that like button, comment down below, subscribe to the Locked On Blackhawks YouTube channel. If you're not subscribed to the channel, that tells me you don't want Macklin Celebrini. Go and subscribe for Celebrini. Hit that subscribe button. And also, make sure to go and check out the new Locked On Sports Today, because Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And Locked On Sports Today has got you covered on everything, all the sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every single league. And hey, March Madness is getting kicked off here this morning. Go and tune in to Locked On Sports Today for coverage of all the games. Go and subscribe on YouTube to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Segment 3, fun little conversation here. The NHL general managers meeting went down in Florida on Tuesday, and among their discussions was some of the proposed rule changes that some personal GMs would like to see made for the 2024-2025 NHL regular season. And I thought it would be interesting to go through all of these live on the show, and I would love to get your reactions on all of them in the comment section. Go and let me know if you think this would be a good rule change, if this is a dumb rule change, if you think this would end up helping out the Blackhawks, since wink, wink, some of these have to do with coaches' challenges, and Luke Richardson seems to be pretty gosh darn good at those since taking over as the head honcho behind the Hawks bench. So make sure to go and let me know your opinions on these potential rule changes in the comments section. One immediate change has been announced, though, first, before I get into the proposed changes. Not really all that noteworthy, but something to kind of keep in mind moving forward. Players will now not be able to have legs over the bench when they're not on the ice. So, sometimes you see when a guy's going for a change, and it usually in the second period when it's the long change and the other guy is trying to get out there on the ice as fast as possible. Sometimes they hang and dangle their legs over the boards. That cannot be allowed any longer. There will be a warning that comes first, because I think it would definitely be a little bit cruel to just install a penalty right there immediately. But if it does have a second time, a bench minor will occur. So just a slight little change in the rules. Not sure it's going to play too big of an impact for us as fans, but I'm sure for the players, they're not all that happy about that. But the first proposed rule change for next season is I started that horribly. The first proposed rule change is that there's a new coach's challenge to review if a puck hits something when it goes over the glass. So if someone gets called for delay of game, but the coach thinks that, hey, might have hit the stanchion, it might have hit the glass, it might have hit the netting, so on and so forth, they can go and challenge that if this rule gets approved. However, if the coach winds up being wrong on that coach's challenge, not only will one bench minor be the result, it'll be two bench minors. That would lead to a 5-on-3 for the other team if the coach were to get this wrong. And personally, I don't love this rule change. I also don't hate it. I also don't hate it because I think the game of hockey is fast enough. They don't really have to worry about like speeding it up and making sure it's going quick enough and losing viewers because of a lack of attention span or because there's not consistent enough game flow going on. I think hockey is kind of the sport that like has that covered. But this would be a way to speed it up a little bit more and make coaches think twice about reviewing. They have to be pretty gosh darn sure that they're going to get it right, or else they're putting their team two men down for 2 minutes of time. So I thought that was really interesting. And there's kind of a similar one as well. A challenge requested for friendly fire minor penalties for high sticking. So this is something that, we have seen from time to time throughout the years is, friendly fire. A teammate actually accidentally catches one of the other boys with the high stick and the officials see it wrong. They call a penalty on the other team. Coaches, if this rule gets accepted, would now be allowed to challenge that it was a friendly fire penalty call. But just like the other one, if they were to get this wrong, it would lead to a 5-on-3 for the other team. So, and I think I wouldn't hate if this rule got installed into the offsides rule, because the offsides rule has just gotten out of hand. And I think they need to put something in the rule book that, like, if the play goes on 30 seconds past the point of offsides, it doesn't really matter at that point in time, right? Like, you can have this butterfly effect with like everything if you really want to, but ultimately you still have the opportunity to clear the puck out of the zone. If it went on for that long, you still had a breakdown that I believe you should be punished for. So I think that would be kind of cool to install that 5-on-3 power play to the offsides rule and make coaches think a little bit more about going for that challenge. The next potential rule change could be granting a replacement goalie a warm-up if the player he subs in for is removed by a concussion spotter. Honestly, I think that's just kind of like common sense, right? You don't want to, it is kind of what happens when, your starter gets absolutely nuclear. You have to bring in a cold backup and all he gets is a couple skates out there. Yeah, I would agree with this one. Like, if a goalie has to be pulled because of a concussion spotter, I think you should allow the backup to get a couple of shots in, because it's not like the goalie is being pulled due to poor play. It's due to, concussion like issues. So I think that one makes sense personally. Go and let me know what you think about that in the comment section. Next one is giving both the defensive and offensive center a warning for a violation on a faceoff after icing, because currently only the defensive center gets one while the offensive center immediately gets ejected. Yeah, right. On icing, I think that would make sense, wouldn't it? Like, you should not punish the offensive team's best face-off winning center and kick him out when the defensive team just iced it. He should have the same rights that the defensive player does as well. So I agree with that one personally. The next one is if play is blown dead because goalie loses his mask, other team is awarded choice of which offensive dot ensuing faceoff will take place. I think that's common sense, right? Yeah, you want to be safe and blow the play dead when the goalie has lost his mask, but sometimes the goalies just throw it off, and that also I think has gotten a touch out of hand. Obviously safety's number one. I don't want any goalie taking a puck to the chops, right? But I think there are times when certain guys are pushing it off when they don't necessarily need to. It's just a little bit uncomfortable on them. And I think it would be a nice bonus to the offensive team when that happens to be able to choose which dot the faceoff will take place at. So I like that one, honestly. And then the last one is moving a faceoff one zone to the benefit of the non-offending team if a player refuses to play a puck off a high stick or a hand pass. So yeah, if this was going to be happening in the neutral zone, right, and a player doesn't want to touch the puck because it would blow it dead because they played it with the high stick, or a teammate did with a hand pass or something, you move it into the offensive zone. Or if that were to happen in the other team's defensive zone, you move it to the neutral zone. I like that one too. Honestly, I personally like all of these rule changes. All of them, quite honestly. There's none that really don't make sense. I'm sure there are some people out there that are thinking a 5-on-3 power play is maybe a little bit too much for losing a coach's challenge. But hey, I think those have kind of gotten hand at this point in time, and that'll probably help control them a little bit or make coaching staffs think twice about going for that challenge if they're not 100% certain. So all of these, by the way, still need to get approved by the competition committee and the board of governors before they even go on to the next step. So there's a long way for these to go, but I thought all of these were pretty good and pretty interesting, and I'm interested to see what all of you have to say about them in the comment section. Again, make sure to go and give me your thoughts on those rule changes potential rule changes if you haven't done so already. All right, that is going to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks. As always, thank you all again for tuning into the show. Be sure to go and follow Locked On Blackhawks for free right now, wherever you may be listening to your podcast, and to go and subscribe for Celebrini. Subscribe to the Locked On Blackhawks YouTube channel, and that way you can get the latest episode as soon as it becomes available each and every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. Go and follow your boy on X at Jack Bushman2. Check out my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey as well. And also, go and follow the Locked On Blackhawks page on X, as I'm closing in on 1,600 subscribers there. Would certainly love to hit that milestone. Until the next episode, everyone, have a great rest of your day. The Hawks back in action tonight against the Anaheim Ducks. Could be a nice little get-right spot. They've taken care of business against the Anaheim Ducks really over the last 6 or 7 years. Had an offensive explosion the last time they played them, as Connor Bedard had 5 points. So hopefully he can make it 6 this time. Everyone have a great rest of your day. I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.